In August 1972, one of the most shocking political decisions in African history unfolded in Uganda. The country's ruler, Idi Amin, ordered the expulsion of nearly 50,000 Asians, mostly of Indian descent, giving them just 90 days to leave the country. This decision would devastate families, disrupt economies, and draw global attention to a brutal dictator's reign. But why did it happen? And what became of the people forced to leave everything behind? To understand the story, we need to go back to the colonial era. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the British Empire brought thousands of Indians to East Africa, many as laborers to build the Uganda Railway, and others as merchants, administrators, and clerks. Over time, these communities grew roots. They opened shops, built homes, and contributed immensely to Uganda's economy. By the 1970s, though Asians made up less than 1% of the population, they controlled the majority of commerce in the country. They owned supermarkets, factories, import-export businesses, and trading companies, creating a thriving middle class. But that prosperity created resentment among some native Ugandans, who felt excluded from the wealth and opportunity that Asians enjoyed. Then came Idi Amin. In January 1971, he seized power in a military coup, overthrowing President Milton Obote. At first, many welcomed him. He was charismatic, bold, and promised a better future for true Ugandans. But Amin was also ruthless, paranoid, and unpredictable. To strengthen his grip on power, he looked for a common enemy, and found one in the Asian community. On August 4, 1972, Amin announced that all non-citizen Asians had 90 days to leave Uganda. He accused them of economic sabotage, tax evasion, and disloyalty to the country, calling them bloodsuckers. Amin claimed he had received a message from God in a dream, commanding him to expel the Asians. In his words, "God told me to give Uganda back to the Ugandans." The order applied to anyone of Asian descent who was not a Ugandan citizen, about 50,000 people, most of whom held British passports. They were told they could take only the equivalent of a few $100s in cash. The rest, businesses, homes, personal belongings, would be left behind. What followed was chaos. Families scrambled to secure flights. Airports were overwhelmed. Some packed everything they could into suitcases. Others were forced to leave with nothing at all. Shops were abandoned. Factories stood still. The heartbeat of Uganda's economy came to a stop. People who had spent generations in Uganda suddenly became refugees overnight. Many ended up in the United Kingdom. Others were sent to Canada, India, or refugee camps. The emotional toll was enormous: fear, anger, heartbreak. And for many, a deep sense of betrayal by a country they had once called home. Amin's government seized the abandoned businesses and handed them over to his supporters, but most of these new owners lacked the skills or experience to run them. Within months, Uganda's economy began to collapse. Shops ran out of goods, inflation soared, industries failed. What had once been one of the most prosperous countries in East Africa fell into deep decline. The expulsion that was meant to empower Ugandans instead deepened poverty and isolation. Around the world, reactions were mixed. Britain condemned Amin's actions and scrambled to resettle tens of thousands of displaced people. India offered some support. But for the most part, the international community stood by as Idi Amin tightened his grip on Uganda. The expelled Asians were left to rebuild their lives from scratch, starting businesses in new countries, raising children in foreign cultures, and preserving memories of a land they had loved and lost. Idi Amin remained in power until 1979, when he was finally overthrown. He fled to Saudi Arabia and lived in exile until his death in 2003. Decades later, Uganda began to reflect on the expulsion. Some of the expelled Asians were invited to return, a few did. Today, their contributions to Uganda's economy and culture are slowly being acknowledged, but the scars remain. The expulsion of 1972 was more than just a political decision. It was a human tragedy, one that uprooted tens of thousands, damaged a nation's economy, and left deep wounds across communities. Yet it is also a story of survival, resilience, and rebuilding. Because while Idi Amin tried to erase a people, he could not erase their strength or their legacy. If you found this story powerful, eye-opening, or even surprising, don't forget to subscribe for more untold true stories from around the world, the kind they never taught us in school.